This is Joseph at Financial All-Star, and in today's video, I'm going to cover how to calculate how much one needs to retire, using myself as a real-world example. Disclaimer, I'm not a certified financial planner, and this information is solely my opinion on the matter. I'm going to be using something called the 4% rule as the basis of my calculation. What is the 4% rule? The 4% rule states that you should be able to comfortably live off of 4% of your money in investments in your first year of retirement, then slightly increase or decrease that amount to account for inflation each year. Based on a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds, at this withdrawal rate, one can expect to never outlive their money. Now, never is a strong term. If you were to Google how long will money last using the 4% rule, you're going to see answers 30 to 40 years. This rule is based on research finding that if you invested at least 50% of your money in stocks and the rest in bonds, you'd have a strong likelihood of being able to withdraw an inflation-adjusted 4% of your nest egg every year for 30 years and possibly longer. Special note here, I will not be using Social Security as part of my calculation due to future unknowns. I do personally believe Social Security will be there for me in the next 15 to 20 years. However, to what extent and purchasing power is wildly unknown, and I'm not going to consider it a guarantee and will not basically be conservative and not include it in this calculation. So the 4% rule in practice. You're going to calculate estimated yearly expenses needed at retirement. You're going to take into consideration things like a mortgage, car payment, boat payment, things that you believe that you're going to need, the amount you're going to need to survive without a job, to no longer be a slave to an employer with a certain amount of money stocked away. I currently use a budgeting app called EveryDollar by Dave Ramsey. There are other ones by Mint or a spreadsheet, and one should use these to find out their historical expenses or go back and look at. Makes it a lot easier to come up with this number. If you're currently not using an app or a way to budget your money, I strongly advise to do so. It makes life a lot easier. So here, the Ramsey one, EveryDollar. It's a free app. They do have a paid version that's a little more fancy, but I use the free version, and it's basically a zero-based budgeting app that you input your income as well as your expenses, and everything cancels out, and you make sure you do not overspend on a monthly basis. Mint also is a very popular one. I currently do not use it, but it is very popular. And you can also use a basic Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheet. So back to practice. You're going to take your yearly expenses that you just calculated. I'm going to times it by a tax rate, times that by an inflation rate, and then divide that number by 0.04, hence the 4% rule. I'm going to assume here, for the sake of simplicity and being conservative, of using pre-tax dollars such as a 401k or a traditional IRA. If you're using a Roth IRA, solely a Roth, you can skip this tax portion. I personally have Roth IRAs as well as traditional 401ks. So to be conservative, I'm acting like I'm going to get taxed on this money, where in actuality, I might not get totally taxed. And I'm going to assume an average yearly inflation rate of 2%. So for 4% rule for Financial All-Star, myself, estimated yearly expenses are $52,000 a year. I'm going to use an estimated tax rate of 20%. Now, I do my taxes myself, and I've never hit this amount. Typically, my overall tax rate is anywhere between 10 and 13%. So to be conservative and to overestimate, 20% seems like a good number to me. I'm going to estimate the years until retirement as 15 years. I'm currently in my lower 40s, plan to hopefully retire in my mid to late 50s, so 15 years sounds applicable here. So I take $52,000, times that by 1.2, then times that by 1.02 to the 15th power, since inflation should be compounded yearly, and it's not just simply times 15, and that gives me a number of $83,400. I take my $83,400, divide that by 0.04, and that gives me a grand total of $2.1 million. So, using the 4% rule for myself, with estimated $52,000 of yearly expenses to survive without an employer, to survive without a job, I'm going to need $2.1 million stocked away in a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds. Now, if you were to research the 4% rule, you may come across some articles that say the 4% rule is obsolete, and many financial experts no longer hold by the 4% rule and think it's too aggressive. And this is based on their estimations of future returns in the markets. CNBC article here says, experts say the 4% rule, a popular retirement income strategy, is outdated. Key point here, the 4% rule, a popular strategy to gauge withdrawals from one's retirement portfolio, won't work as well in coming decades due to lower projected stock and bond returns, according to Morningstar. The withdrawal rate should instead be 3.3%. So what do I do about that? I'm going to do the same calculation, but I'm going to use the 3% rule. $83,400, divide that by 0.03, gives me $2.8 million, roughly, just under. So, being conservative again as I am, I round that up to $3 million. So for myself, I will need $3 million for myself and my family to maintain the same standard of living that I'm currently used to live off of basically 4% of that number. If you're finding this video helpful, please hit the like and subscribe buttons and leave a comment below on how you are calculating how much you need in retirement. And in my next video, I plan to go over the steps I plan to take to hit this $3 million mark and to calculate how much and by what age I should be able to reach it in. Thank you so much for watching.